Let's take a look at our latest crop progress report. USDA says the nation's corn crop is 67% good to excellent. And that's 1% down from last week's report. And get this, 22% of the corn has matured, and that's double the number from the crop's 5-year average. Now, as we move on to soybeans, things look to be remaining steady as far as that crop is concerned. Producers reporting the crop 66% good to excellent, and that's equal to last week. 16% of the soybean crop is dropping leaves, and that's above the 5-year average, which is 9%. And as far as spring wheat is concerned, 87% of that crop has been harvested. That's also above the 5-year average, which is 75%. If we look at things by state, Nebraska leads the way with 81% of the overall crop rated good to excellent. Illinois and Iowa, they're at 75 and 74% respectively, so not too far behind when you look at things from a state-by-state basis. We're joined today by market analyst Elaine Kub. She's also written the book, Mastering the Grain Markets, How Profits Are Really Made. She's going to help us make sense of some of the latest numbers in the new crop report. Elaine, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for the invite.
Now, before you help us break down some of the market numbers, let's talk a bit about the big news from last week. Tariffs and trade wars have been dominating a lot of the news, and we got word the Agriculture Department will be paying money to some producers hit especially hard. So who's included on that list, and what are your thoughts on how it may impact certain producers?
Well, receiving checks from the government is not the way that profits are made, right? The big winners of that program are soybean producers. The program is $1.65 per bushel for soybeans, but only on 50% of the bushels, so that's really not $1.65. That's now 82.5 cents per bushel for soybeans. Like a penny for corn, 14 cents for wheat, so there has been some pushback on that, but it really is more justified for the soybeans than the corn. If you look at actual corn prices right now, the National Corn Index, which is an average of cash bids collected by DTN, that's $3.24 right now, and last September at this time it was more like $3 even. So it kind of makes sense that some of those commodities got left out, and the soybeans were the big beneficiary of that government program.
And as for the markets, the latest crop progress report came out. What were some of your big takeaways from that? Any surprises with the report?
Well, no. I mean, this is the time of year when the crop is pretty well made. The row crop is pretty well made. And we did see those condition ratings pretty much steady for corn and soybeans. We did, however, see an improvement in the condition ratings for the pastures and range. So that suggests to me that like this rain that we have been receiving, especially in the southern plains where they really need it, that has benefited those areas that can still benefit from it.
So let's dig a little more into those numbers. Which ones in particular stuck out to you?
Yeah, not just the condition ratings, but the progress of it. And this has been true all summer. Things are just moving really, really fast. The USDA said 22% nationwide of the corn crop is already mature, compared to an average this time of year of only 11%. So we're going to see that continue to be reflected in faster than usual harvest progress paces. Texas is already over half done. It's coming up through Kentucky, through Arkansas, 30% done. So things are going to be happening fast, and so the weather now really affects that harvest outlook.
Yeah, we'll get more into the weather in a second, but I did want to touch on the wheat market. Things have been pretty volatile for wheat producers. Do you see any cause for concern with that, or do you think things have started to settle down?
I wouldn't be too concerned about it. The big concern last week was that Russia might limit their exports, but that turned out to be just a rumor, so we had a sell-off after that. So I think the peak panic in the wheat market was in early August, and now that peak panic is over, and now we might just bounce along, and the prospect would be in the U.S. wheat market for basis prices to improve as we go forward.
Now let's go back to the weather. You touched on that briefly. Many parts of the country dealing with storms this week, and that could help soybean producers, but what about the corn producers who are looking at that early harvest?
Yeah, this rain right now is not really helpful, especially as it's coming up through the Gulf, these Gulf storms. That's not great for cotton harvest. Cotton prices really aren't responding to that. And that's sort of the story throughout the commodity markets, is we're probably not going to see prices respond but it's going to make harvest more challenging. You've got folks cutting silage right now all through the Corn Belt. Rain right now just makes everything more challenging, but probably won't affect prices.
Right. I know cotton farmers definitely paying attention to what Tropical Storm Gordon is doing. What other disruptions do you think could result?
Yeah, ordinarily when you get tropical storms like this in the Gulf, you start to really worry about the SIF barge shipping lanes, getting soybeans to the market effectively. But right now, since we don't have a lot of export business on the books, that may not be as big of a story in 2018 as it would be in other years.
Yeah, and even with all the recent crazy weather, it looks like a good bet that the crop supply is going to be pretty strong, maybe a little too strong when you think about where all this inventory is going to go. So with all the trade disputes, how do you see this ending?
I do not see it ending well. I see it ending in a lot of big open piles across the Corn Belt. We've got very large futures spreads for corn, like 12 cents from harvest to March. For soybeans, it's like 25 cents of carry from harvest, carrying it through March. So obviously all of the elevators and commercial grain companies are going to store as many beans as they can, hopefully ship out a little more corn than usual for this time of year. But farmers too really need to be thinking about where can they store this grain and keep it off the market.
And to wrap things up, what's your outlook as we head into fall? Any advice for farmers?
Yeah, just store that grain. For years I've been bullish about building bins because we know this country can grow very large crops or grow large inventories of crops. So it's a little bit late to be building bins for the 2018 harvest, but if you can figure out ways to put this grain in bags, soybeans in bags, if you've got maybe even an old machine shed that you could convert into flat storage, honestly, any sort of grain storage is going to be very important in these next few months.
Elaine Kub, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Troy.
Good to talk to you.